Hey guys, what's up? This is What the Tech, and this is probably the most exciting phone out there right now, the Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, or simply put, the Z Flip 3. Let's check it out. For those not up to speed or in the knowing, the Z Flip is one of two foldables that Samsung offers. The Z Flip is designed to make a standard smartphone more compact, so standard size one makes it smaller, while the Z Fold is supposed to make a tablet or a mini tablet kind of device into a more pocketable size. The Z Flip is Samsung's third generation and third take of this particular form factor, and it looks like third time's the charm here. This device is no longer left for those who are willing to pay a early adopters tax. This is something that more people can get because it is slightly more affordable now. Now, one of the most surefire ways to tell when something has matured in the realms of technology, and this goes to any tech by the way, is its end cost. The Z Flip 3 here is definitely not an entry-level device. It's not even mid-range. It starts at $1,000, which puts it squarely in flagship territory. But it is actually $500 cheaper than its previous predecessor at around $1,500. Remember when backup cameras used to only be in luxury cars? Well, now it's almost in all of them. And that kind of trajectory is kind of what we're looking at here for the folding phone segment. Samsung's getting a lot better and efficient at building these, and also on top of that, they're getting much better at sourcing materials as well, because it's a little harder to make a folding display, as you could guess. Now let's jump into the realm of design. The Z Flip 3 shares the same overall design as its predecessor, with some stylistic changes here and there. Now, because not a lot of people bought the previous Z Flips due to their high prices, chances are, if you take out this phone out in public, people will notice it, especially when you fold it up and place it in your pocket. I have the purple one here because I think it looks the best of the entire lineup, and I really like how handsome the whole device looks. The glass back paired with the Pixel-esque two-tone color setup hides the rear LED display and blends in with the camera area quite well. The phone itself is paired with an aluminum side railing that goes around the entirety of the device, and it unveils the same brushed aluminum hinge with the Samsung logo. It's easy on the eyes for sure. Now, there is a noticeable amount of antenna lines, but chances are you're gonna throw a case on this. And if you're a madman that runs phones without cases naked, then that's something to keep in mind. Flipping over to the front, we have a 6.7-inch OLED display that has an adaptive refresh rate that tops off at 120 Hz. There's also a top center hole punch for the camera. In terms of I/O, we just have one, a USB-C port and no headphone jack. Now on top of the display itself, right over here, there's actually a factory installed screen protector that Samsung has shipped out of the box. The screen protector actually doesn't cover the entirety of the display. Because it's a hole punch, there's a little gap up there where it's just not covered, it's left bare and unprotected. Now that's all fine and all, but out of the box, seeing it on, my lizard brain kept telling me to peel off that screen protector, but I had to remind myself, it's not a cheap adhesive to protect the screen in shipping, it's actually a real quality screen protector. I mean, it doesn't feel cheap, and I guess that's good for them. But overall, I would have preferred if it actually covered the entirety of the display. Let's move into the camera and pictures now, because I want to get this out of the way. In the realm of folding phones, this isn't high up in the list of important things, but it still needs to be addressed. The rear main shooters are two 12 megapixel cameras for the standard wide and ultra wide lens, as well as a 10 megapixel selfie camera. The specs are actually the same as the last generations. The photos themselves, unsurprisingly, are very Samsung-like, with high saturation and vibrancy. Unfortunately, given the price, it just doesn't perform close at all to the Pixel, OnePlus, or iPhone in terms of camera quality. So if that's a high factor in your personal weighing mechanism on what makes a good phone, this needs to be taken into consideration. In most situations and in well-lit environments, it's a good camera. You'll be happy with the photos, and they're still pretty great on sharing on Instagram and Twitter, but you're just not getting the same attention and detail as the aforementioned competitors are in this price range. In low light, it performs okay. Definitely not as good as competitors, but it's definitely usable. Now onto the main meat of this video, the daily usage. When using the Z Flip 3, what caught me most off guard was just how easy it was to get used to a folding device. I expected a bit more friction in my day-to-day, but it was either none to minimal. One of the ways that Samsung got around to remedying this issue of always taking out your phone and folding it out to use it was to install or to put a much larger rear display. The OLED one in the back. Come on, work. There we go. It covered almost everything I really use my phone for in less than 5 seconds. Checking the time, checking my messages, and changing songs, but also seeing the weather. Now this is important to note. The only way you could actually respond to text messages from this rear display is by using Bixby's voice dictation. And honestly, it did get a lot better. The tech community does give Bixby a lot of crap, but it honestly is pretty good. It still messes up the same way as voice dictation does. If it catches the wrong word in the beginning of the sentence, the whole sentence gets thrown off because of how sentences and machine learning works. But that's a rare occurrence. It's funny because it seems like Samsung was trying to give me a lot of reasons why not to open up the clamshell when they actually put a lot of effort in making it a lot more durable in general. The folding mechanism is supposedly benefiting from a massive improvement in terms of durability, specifically in the hinge. There are self-healing gaskets inside the phone, and Samsung quotes an increased folding rate of 200,000 folds before it starts to break down. And on top of that, an IP8X water resistance rating, so it can survive rain, splash, or a dunk in the pool. Now this really is an incredible feat of engineering here for this exposed hinge. Now there is no official dust rating, so this is good for the rain or pool, but not for the beach and outdoor adventures. When folding the phone closed and opening it up, it's a bit stiff. I suppose this was done to make the end user feel more confident in the heft of it all, but it makes it difficult for one-hand use. So that cool closing of the phone after a phone call isn't as dramatic as it used to be back in 2005 when the Razr came out, but it still made a satisfying clamp noise. For my usage, I always close it with two hands due to the stiffness, and I felt as if it was kind of weird trying to close it with one hand because the amount of force you had to put made you feel like it was going to fly out. Now let's talk about something that's unavoidable when talking about folding phones, specifically Samsung's folding phones, and that is the crease. Almost everyone out there, when they want to know more about the folding phones and the state of foldables, always ask, well, me as well as others, about just how the crease is and how visible it is in day-to-day use. And I gotta be honest with you guys, it's unavoidable. It's there. You will notice it when the display is off, when it's dim, or when it's at a high brightness and the picture, what you're seeing, is mostly white. But when you're reading content, looking at videos and pictures, you really won't notice it that much at all, especially with, things with lots of color. When you are doom scrolling or just going through a bunch of social media and reading, when your finger goes up and down the phone, you will feel the ridge though, the crease. That's just unavoidable, that's there. But with that said, I erased this. Is it that much different from a hole punch? Or even a notch, the much bigger notch? Yes, it is there, but it really does mold away of the phone once you get used to it, and you get used to it pretty quickly. To round up daily usage, I really do like the tall aspect ratio. It's great for reading content, and when watching media, you don't really notice the hole punch that much because you have to put the content a little more in the middle of the phone so you avoid the hole punch. But when you pinch in, you will get that hole punch in your content. One of the issues of a taller aspect ratio phone, however, is that when you put it in your pocket, and some of you guys may know this, it feels like it wants to jump out of your pocket, especially if you're sitting on a chair or as you get in your car actually and getting out, it wants to jump out. The cool thing about a folding phone that folds like a clamshell, it makes it smaller. And once you go in, it won't jump out of there. Also, when you fold it up, it really does take up about as much space as a wallet with a few cards in it, some cash, and a bit of receipts. Not really a standard metric measurement system there. Americans use everything but metric. But it's a little thick, it's a little thick. So like 2 C's. Speakers were good. They get up nice and loud and don't really bottom out until like you're really up there high in the max decibel ratings. One thing that's really nice actually with the dishwasher test, that's the thing I do where like I wash dishes and see if I can hear my content well, is that when you are washing dishes, and if you have a windowsill in front of your dishwasher or the sink, you have a windowsill in front of your sink, you can put the phone like this, right? And watch YouTube on this display and select what videos you want on this one here. And just like that, you're washing dishes, you have your volume coming at you, and you can see it. That's pretty cool. This is more handy and something you're more likely to use a folding phone for as opposed to what Samsung offers in their marketing. You aren't really gonna do this, putting on a ledge and do a massive choreographed dance in the street with a flash mob. But I'm not paid the big bucks, so oh well. Now let's run down the specs before we jump into performance. It has the Qualcomm 888 processor, a 6.7-inch display of 264 by 1080p with 120Hz refresh rate, 8GB of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, 2 rear cameras both at 12 megapixels for the wide shooter and ultra wide, a 10 megapixel selfie camera, Bluetooth 5.1 support, Wi-Fi 6, 5G with support for both mid-band and ultra wideband, if you can find it, and it's getting better to find, I like to say. And finally, a 3,300 mAh battery. Now performance with the Z Flip was, I could say, very flagship. It's really hard actually to make a bad phone, as I did in my Pixel, I think 5 video. Even with a mid-ranger, the 7 something G, it performed quite well. And with the 888, this is no slouch. It handled everything I could throw of it. All my news, app stuff, multitasking, videos, light gameplay. It handled it really well. It has the 888 processor, 8 gigs of RAM. I didn't notice apps were closing out in the background that often. Actually, not at all now that I think about it. Even many apps I had last night stayed open tomorrow morning. Now, beyond that, we have to look at the battery life here. And the battery life, if I could rate it, was probably a B or B minus. It's middling. Not bad, not great either. For most normal instances of a proper day where you aren't pushing this, right, you're not reviewing the phone, you'll probably end the day when you go to sleep at around maybe 20 or 30%. But when I was doing heavy days where I was like taking lots of pictures, videos, multitasking, listening to music, watching videos on LTE, never 5G, that saves you battery, by the way. I'd end the day with less than that, probably 10%, or sometimes I have to charge up in the middle of the day if I didn't feel confident. You'd want to top off just to make sure if an emergency happens, you can still call people. Now, the reason why the battery life isn't as great as other phones in this price range is because of, well, space constraints. There is a physical hinge inside here, and that takes up space where a battery could be. And this just goes to show that at the moment, with our current battery tech, displacement is still more important than efficiency. I guess the cool thing about this in realms of performance and battery is that when the phone does get warm, which it does sometimes get warm, is that the heat dissipates around the upper region here. And for most normal users, you hold the phone like this. Because your palm's on the bottom section here, you actually don't feel how warm the phone gets. Alright, so let's sum this up. This is a good phone, and it's a great folding phone. It's a third generation and third take of Samsung's Z Flip line, and it really does show just how much the category has matured in such a short amount of time. Now, even though this is the third generation, this is the first generation that really matters. How well this does will dictate how they move forward with their Galaxy line and Note line, because this kind of phone and the folding Fold series, they're gonna cannibalize on the Galaxy series. And this is a tough balancing act Samsung has to take in consideration here. Because right now, if you're Samsung, you are facing stiff competition from Apple in the high end of the price bracket and from Chinese vendors from the low end. And let's not kid ourselves here. There are a lot of great quality flagship Chinese phones out there, like some of the latest Huawei phones that North American consumers just can't get. But internationally, they're facing competition in all areas of where they operate. The best way you can differentiate yourself is, hey, my phone can fold. Now, the Fold series, the Fold and Flip series aren't going to replace the A series of phone anytime soon, because those are pretty solidly mid-range, and I doubt this is going to become a mid-range option anytime soon. But we're in a very peculiar situation now where if Samsung starts putting more, I don't want to say effort because there's a lot of effort already, but if Samsung pushes the Z Flip more predominantly, what's the point of the Galaxy series? And then if the Fold ends up being cheaper in price by maybe another $200-$400 by just sheer efficiency, and that's going to be many years down the line, what's the point of the Note, especially if you can put a pen inside the Fold at some point? I don't know. And maybe we'll see those phones just get discontinued eventually. But those are going to be some very tough decisions that Samsung has to figure out, and time is not on their side. They got to figure it out soon. I like the Z Flip. The folding aspect of the phone is a bit gimmicky, to be honest, because when you're using it, you are actually adding an extra step. Because you're on the computer, you take it out of your pocket, to check stuff, to text people, you have to open it. With a regular phone, you just take it out. But hey, it's a gimmick, but it also is something that's genuinely cool. It blows a breath of fresh air into a pretty stale environment, because you really can't innovate phones that much anymore than they already are. You throw in a faster processor, a better camera, but the whole slab of glass aspect of it, that's down. That's dialed down to a point. There's no moving past that. But what if you could fold that slab of glass? The funny thing about what I just said is that actually, when I'm inside the house, I found myself leaving the phone opened up most of the time, and I'm only really folding it when I'm actually going out and about. So take that in consideration as a late add-on to daily usage. But as I said earlier, it's hard to make a bad phone, and these Flip series, and especially the Fold series, they're going to get better and they're going to get cheaper. And this is it. This is a ready for mass market adoption folding phone, and if you want to have the latest technology and probably what the future is going to be in terms of smartphone tech, get the Z Flip 3. Just know that when you get the Z Flip 3, you are going to be missing out on an official dust rating for ingress protection. You're not going to have the best battery life, and also you're not going to have a great camera. Those are the three things you're giving up when you get the Z Flip 3. But it still is a very competent smartphone. It folds, which not a lot of phones can do at the moment, and honestly, you stand out from everyone else. This makes a much better conversation starter than, is that the new iPhone? Yeah, the notch is smaller and it comes in Sierra Blue. Alright folks, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.